Hello and welcome to the second Virtual Civic Saturday. I'm Janae Kane.
And I'm Eric Liu.
And we are the co-founders of Citizen University. And we're so glad that you're joining us here today. We're here in Seattle, and we want to take a second to see where you are joining us from today. Oh gosh, I see folks from Delray Beach, Florida, North Seattle, Oakland, California,
Toronto, Canada.
All right, Capitol Hill, Vashon, Queen Anne,
Lincoln, Nebraska.
my neighbors across the street. And no matter where you are joining us from today, we just want you to know that it feels really, really good to have you here. We started Civic Saturday about 3 years ago here in Seattle. We wanted to create a civic analog to a faith gathering, a place where people could come to find fellowship and build a community and think about and ponder the ideas and the ideals of what it means to be an American and how to show up as a citizen.
One of the things that's been great about doing Civic Saturdays here in Seattle is that it's led us to work with people all around the country. We created a Civic Saturday fellowship program to train catalysts from communities all over to lead these gatherings where they live. And that's just part of the broader mission that we have here at Citizen University. We think about our work as trying to build a culture of powerful, responsible citizenship. We focus so much on trying to spread a belief that a strong democracy requires strong citizens, that we all have the power to make change happen, and we all have the responsibility to try. And that belief undergirds everything we do at Citizen University in all of our programming.
So what are we going to do today at this gathering that we're all here together? We, like we said, it follows the arc of a faith gathering. So we are going to sit together in a moment of centering meditation. We are going to hear poetry. We're going to hear songs. We're going to have an opportunity after this is over to join together in civic circles. And there is a link that you can sign up on in the chat. We're going to hear Civic Scripture. Eric will lead us in a Civic Sermon. Then we'll have more song and more poetry.
And the thing that I want to say about the gathering afterward, when we meet in person, which we've been doing, as Janae said, for 3+ years, there's of course such a different vibe, and we felt it was so important in this time to connect with our community and to try to expand our community in this virtual way. Typically at a gathering, we would be turning to each other and talking to each other and meeting strangers and new friends. And that's why we've created this Civic Circle moment at the end of the program today. So you can sign up for that. You'll get an email that will give you a link to join the circles on Zoom, where you can continue the discussion. We'll give you a prompt later to help get that conversation going. But the idea throughout is to try to bring us together in ways that are about not only thinking, but feeling, and not only just dealing with the moment right now of crisis, but to put ourselves in some kind of context and perspective.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is just get comfortable where you are, and we're going to now hear from our good friend Na Akua.
Hey everyone, my name is again Na Akua. originally from New York, but connecting with you on a couch in Seattle, Washington. So what we're going to do right now to get ourselves grounded is do a breathing exercise called 4462. So if you would like to sit down comfortably, close your eyes, and just take a moment to breathe. Breathe in for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe in for 2. 1, 2. Breathe out. We are a springtime glint through dusty windows, rooted to the seams of our couches and chairs. No one could say they foreseen this 2020 vision, this universal invocation to be still and see, this laundry list of imbalances, the unknown names of leaders masked with the word essential stitched across their chest. We are a world breathing for the first time in years, whispering, I didn't know, but letting the phrase, I love you, become habit, become daily routine, become mantra, become truth, become just enough for more light to shine through.
Thank you, Na. Now I just want to have a quick reminder, or if you just joined us, that if you look over in the chat, you will find a link where you can sign up for our civic circles, which will be smaller breakout circles that you can join via Zoom right after this. Now I would like to introduce our musicians for today, Joey Shaw and Raquel Chavez.
Hi. Thank you so much for having us, Janae and Eric. And thanks to everyone at Citizen University. I'm Joey Shaw.
I'm Raquel Chavez.
We're coming live to you from Fairfax, California. And thank you, Na, for that beautiful poem and for the breathing exercise. That's actually really great to have right before singing the song. So we're gonna do Have You Ever Seen the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Now I've done a couple Civic Saturdays before, and one of the joys of that is that, you know, we're all in a group together and we all get to sing along together. And usually there's some kind of there's some hurdles to get over when you ask a group to sing together. But usually there's other people there to kind of, you know, get you going. So you might not have that person with you right now to kind of bounce off of, but if you're alone, all the more reason to let loose. So I hope you'll sing along when we sing Someone Told Me Long Ago. That's what we're gonna start with. 5, 6, 7, 8.
Someone told me long ago, there's a calm before the storm. I know it's been coming for heart go fast and slow. I know it can't stop, I wonder. I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain coming down on a sunny day? Yeah, yeah. I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain? I wanna know, have you ever seen the rain coming down on a sunny day?
Oh my goodness. Raquel and Joey, thank you so much. That just opens up so much in all of us. And Joey, when you said right before you guys began to perform that if you're alone, all the more reason to let loose. That's true. And let's remember, especially right now, you're never alone. So the short answer is just let loose. And we sure appreciated the way you both let loose there. When we gather at Civic Saturdays in person, it's always part of our arc that we have a reading of a text or two that we think of as civic scripture, texts drawn from different parts of the American tradition, words that you may know or may not know, but form some sense of our identity as people who are not just Americans today, but inheritors of an experiment. And so today we have a text that Janae is going to share with us.
President Franklin D. Roosevelt, from his first inaugural address, March 4th, 1933. This is preeminently the time to speak the truth, the whole truth, frankly and boldly. Nor need we shrink from honestly facing conditions in our country today. This great nation will endure, as it has endured, will revive, and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. In every dark hour of our national life, a leadership of frankness and vigor has met with that understanding and support of the people themselves, which is essential to victory. In such a spirit, on my part and on yours, we face our common difficulties. They concern, thank God, only material things. Values have shrunken to fantastic levels. Taxes have risen. Our ability to pay has fallen. Government of all kinds is faced by serious curtailment of income. The means of exchange are frozen in the currents of trade. The withered leaves of industrial enterprise lie on every side. Farmers find no markets for their produce. The savings of many years in thousands of families are gone. Most important, a host of unemployed citizens face the grim problem of existence, and an equally great number toil with little return. Only a foolish optimist can deny the dark realities of the moment.
Thanks, Janae. When we gather at Civic Saturday, that piece of scripture is meant to orient us in time and place and history. And I think you'd have to be not awake to feel the ways in which those words reverberate from 1933 to this moment of fear and uncertainty right now. And typically when we gather, we do these readings of civic scripture so that I can then open up a sermon. And usually I have a sermon that I've written out in 8 or 10 pages, and I'll read that sermon from a lectern. And we did that actually the first Virtual Civic Saturday 3 weeks ago, and it worked pretty well. But I felt like reading for all that time put a little bit of a distance between me and you. And so what I wanted to do today is to offer some thoughts inspired by that piece of Civic Scripture, those words of Franklin D. Roosevelt from 1933. But instead of reading 8 or 10 pages of pre-written, pre-crafted text, I'm going to speak somewhat more extemporaneously from some notes and really try to hit some notes that I think need to be hit right now. I want to begin by just actually reflecting on some great partners of ours. We're gathered here today virtually, not only because we at Citizen University have invited you, but also our friends at Town Hall Seattle. And Town Hall Seattle, which is such a central institution to the civic life of our hometown, several years ago hosted a Civic Saturday where we had several hundred of us gathered in their great hall. And one of the folks who was in that group of several hundred was a fellow named David Byrne, the musician, the performer, the kind of legend, and now reborn as a legend on stage on Broadway with this show American Utopia. And David Byrne was at this gathering that day because he was in Seattle for a musical that he was putting on at the Rep. Someone had told him, hey, you should go check out this Civic Saturday thing. We think you might like it. And he did. And he did it in great David Byrne fashion, which is to make it not about him. He sat in the pews like everybody else. He sang not on stage, not as David Byrne, but just as a member of the body. And afterwards, he was moved enough that he started to include Civic Saturdays in a talk that he was giving, this kind of PowerPoint slideshow, a traveling slideshow that he was doing around the country called Reasons to be Cheerful. He later created a blog and website, I think, maybe even a book on that idea of reasons to be cheerful. And I wanted to remember that today because we have reasons today, maybe a bridge too far to say cheerful, but we do have reasons to be hopeful. And what I wanted to spend some time talking about today is 3 things. First of all, reasons to be hopeful in this moment. Second of all, reasons still to be fearful. Third, what it's going to look like if we imagine a civic recovery. And then finally, a few words on a word that's gotten a lot of unfortunate play in the last 24 hours, liberation. Let me begin with reasons to be hopeful. I think, all of us right now, especially those of us who are spending our time on social media and virtually this way, are yearning for reasons to be hopeful. And actually, the great thing is they are everywhere to be found. In our work at Citizen University, our team is doing these regular Zoom calls with different groups of the civic catalysts we work with. Just yesterday, we had one with a group called the Civic Collaboratory, which is this national mutual aid network of civic innovators drawn from across the geography of the United States, from all different silos of civic work, whether it's civic tech, civic education, veterans, immigrant rights, voting reform, from the left and the right. And we think of ourselves as a mutual aid club because we don't just gather and network, we gather and we offer commitments of help to each other. And in yesterday's Zoom meeting, we heard from folks in so many different ways about the work they were doing. People who are reimagining civic education right now at a time when people can't go to school buildings and using both longstanding platforms like iCivics, which if you don't know about, you ought to know about, a gaming platform for middle and high school students that teaches civics, to brand new innovations online. We heard about collaborations between great libertarian organizations that are trying to mobilize business to be part of the solution right now, on the one hand, and veteran serving organizations on the other, who are trying to find ways to plug in veterans of our generation's wars so that they don't have to go through yet more trauma right now in this economic catastrophe that we're in, and connecting the dots between those veterans and work opportunities. We heard about people who are organizing civic dinners, who've always been organizing them around dinner tables, and now are organizing them around Zoom tables, still over breaking bread and drinking some wine, connecting with each other in new ways. We've heard about people who are doing all kinds of work in faith communities, in democracy reform work. And that's just our work. We spend time, I think, all of us who have the blessing to take a moment right now, even though so many of us are in pain, even though so many of us tuning in today are tuning in because those close to us have lost a job, have perhaps lost a family member to the virus. We're also seeking and searching right now. I think about my own family in the last even 5-7 days, in the ways that we've been finding new ways to be hopeful and to connect with one another, whether that's exercise classes and drawing classes on Instagram, whether it's Friday night multi-family dance parties, whether it's the Disney sing-along that I hope many of you tuned into on TV the other day, which is corny and corporate as it was, where they're plugging Disney Plus the whole time, and yet it was still a thing that actually just brought tears to my eyes, and this joy of, wow, we're with a lot of people right now doing the same thing and hoping for the same thing. I think the bottom line is, whether it's in our own family lives, our own work lives, there are reasons to be hopeful. You think about the remarkable collaborations that are sprouting up out of nowhere. People from once competing organizations trying to collaborate and figure out ways to find a vaccine for COVID-19. People trying to plug in the many gaps in our health and public health care systems. That is reason to be hopeful. And I think the greatest reason to be hopeful is that we are reminded right now, even as we gathered here today, that fundamentally, we're always yearning for connection. We're always yearning for belonging. We're always yearning for invitation. And right now, because we've been forced in a different way to seek it, we're finding new ways to find it. Those are the reasons to be hopeful. But I think we're realistic enough, and we're gathered here today because we are hurting enough to realize that there are many, many reasons, you might say many, many more reasons, to be fearful right now. And that's the second thing I want to talk about. You know, I don't need to recite the headlines and the statistics. You know, the 22 million first-time filers for unemployment is a number that you can represent graphically, you can represent in historical scales, and it's just off the scales and off the charts. But 22 million is an abstraction, right? One person who's lost their job, one person who was months away from retiring perhaps, and now can't even see the light at the end of the tunnel. One person who was hoping just for the first time to scrape herself out of debt and maybe be able to create some foundation for future security as a young person, and now sees that floor fall out from beneath her. One person with no particular sense of when this darkness is going to end. It's not 22 million, it's one person's pain, one person's privation multiplied 22 million times over and over again. I saw a message yesterday from one of the members of our civic collaboratory community, Reverend Jen Bailey. She and a colleague of hers, Mickey Scott Bay Jones, helped lead something called Faith Matters Network. And they've been asking a very simple question right now, which is this: where does it hurt? Where does it hurt? You don't have to have lost a job yet to be hurting. You don't have to be in mortal fear of the virus affecting you or someone very close to you to be hurting. Where does it hurt right now? That is the question. And I think when you recognize that question on a personal scale and you scale that up times 22 million, times 220 million, you realize the danger that we're in right now. You know, the first wave of a crisis, the hurricane, so to speak, creates immediately afterwards that surge of fellow feeling, that immediate willingness to sacrifice and pull together without regard to background or class or color, and to just help one another and pull together. And we felt that in the first few weeks. But now, as we realize that there is no quick end to this, much as some might wish to decree a quick end to it, there is no quick end to this. And what becomes more worrisome is not only that the public health crisis and therefore the economic crisis is going to have multiple curves and multiple waves, but that the foundations of our economy and therefore the foundations of the body politic are going to be shaken. You realize in a time like this that all bets are off. History teaches us that in moments of economic catastrophe and social dislocation, what is bred is authoritarianism on both the right and the left. Top dog, underdog, clean, filthy, binaries of hate and shame. When the economy is comatose and the body politic is sclerotic, our worst inner demons come awake. Nationalism and mortal fear of outsiders rises, as it has here in the United States, as it is in China and Brazil and all across Europe. And you remember too, from studying history, and American history in particular, that FDR was great. And FDR gave us hope and he gave us confidence. And he tried this method of bold, persistent, relentless experimentation that gave people a sense that maybe there was a way out. But history teaches us, if you study it closely, that the New Deal didn't actually fix the Depression. Only war did. The Second World War is what ended the Depression. And that is a reason to be fearful right now. And so that brings me to the third thing that I want to talk about here today, which is, what is it going to look like for us to be part of the recovery? There's a lot of talk right now, a lot of plans and a lot of work going into the economic recovery. Commissions are being formed. Governors are appointing blue ribbon bodies to think about and plan for that recovery. But the thing is, we need a civic recovery too. And the civic recovery isn't going to be led by blue ribbon commissions of governors and rich business people. The civic recovery is going to be led by us, by little platoons of everyday citizens showing up, organizing, and self-organizing. One of our collaboratory members, Sherry Davis, is the director of a project called the Participatory Budgeting Project, which, if you don't know about, and if you haven't heard of that movement, is a remarkable thing. It started in Brazil, it's spread all around the world now, and it's taking deep root in the United States, and it's teaching citizens to take chunks of city budgets and say to the city, we don't want you to decide how to spend that money. We, the people, want to decide how to spend that money. It's building these partnerships with city governments to take that ownership and participation. And Sherry was on this Zoom call that I was telling you about yesterday. And we got onto this topic of, what is a recovery going to look like? Can we begin to imagine what civic recovery is? And she said, you know what? I actually have a little bit of a hesitation about that framing of things, because it assumes that a civic recovery is going to require brand new approaches, brand new solutions, brand new things. And what she said is, I think, from where I stand, civic recovery is just going to require us to remember things we've always been doing, to do those things with more intention, more urgency, more purpose, more speed. And that work of actually doing the civic recovery is about rekindling habits and recovering habits that many of us have perhaps forgotten. At Citizen University, we have a slogan that we like to use, which is, live like a citizen. Doesn't matter what your documentation status is, doesn't matter what passport you hold. To live like a citizen means to show up as a member of the body, a pro-social contributor. And there are a bunch of verbs that we have in that idea of live like a citizen. Listen, learn, gather, serve, join, argue, vote, circulate, participate, include. Those verbs don't change because of COVID. Those verbs won't change in the aftermath of COVID, wave 2, wave 3. Only the urgency of acting out those verbs changes. So what does it mean for us to foster a civic recovery? It means, in the first place, we've got to reimagine our forms of association. If it's going to be a long time for us to meet in person again, we've got to do more of this every single day. I don't mean those Zoom calls that are getting us tired. I mean invitations for us to feed each other, to learn from each other, to create a moment of ritual, to make little clubs. Some of those can be civic clubs, some of them can be baseball clubs, gardening clubs, book clubs, whatever. Form a club, make it online. If the virus ends tomorrow and we no longer have to do all this stuff online, then take those clubs offline. That'll be great. But right now it's time for us to reimagine forms of association and seed 1 million of these circles. Second, we've got to listen for the pain. It's not hard. The pain is all around us right now. The pain is in our hearts, in our families, but listening for it means actually giving voice to it too. One of the books that I've read recently is called 1/3 of a Nation. And it was a report by a journalist named Lorena Hickok. Some of you know, she's famous for having been a friend, some say an intimate friend, of Eleanor Roosevelt. And she was a journalist who was dispatched by Harry Hopkins of the Recovery Bureau to go travel the country and just report, not as a bureaucrat, but just as a person with eyes and ears, on what was going on across the land as people were trying to deal with the Depression and the early relief efforts were getting underway. Her job was to listen for the pain. And when she reported it back, that listening fed into the ways in which those programs changed and adapted. And we've got to do that now. We've got to both listen for that pain and figure out how that's going to change the way we teach, we work, we organize. The third thing we've got to do is to rebuild the infrastructure of civic gatherings and civic work. The unfortunate reality is that this cataclysm is going to wipe off the face of the earth many nonprofit organizations. It already has. There are going to be many organizations that do vital work to bring power to the powerless, to give voice to disfavored groups, refugees, immigrants, people who live without homes. Those organizations are falling by the wayside left and right. And so we've got to, yes, right now, donate and contribute if we can, our time, our talent, our treasure. But we've also got to start imagining what are new ways for that work to happen. What are ways for mutual aid to pull together the remnants of those organizations into new forms and formats so that we can stitch together new kinds of safety nets that don't rely first on government. And then finally, we've got to do all this work with a greater sense of inclusivity. The one thing about this moment right now in Zoom circles and gatherings is that, you know what it does oftentimes? And the reason why we appreciate Civic Saturday and all of you signing in on the chat and joining us from around the world is that most of the time these gatherings online are bringing together birds of a feather. They're bringing together folks you already know. Maybe it's my old college classmates or my high school buddies. We haven't talked in a long time, and it's wonderful to reconnect with them. But we've got to start being intentional about including folks who don't have a seat at the table, including folks who aren't already in our circle, including folks who may have talent, but not connections or capital to be in our conversations. And wherever you are, whatever space you hold, it can be a poetry space, it can be a civic space, it can be a business space, as we gather and convene online, to be more inclusive, be more attentive to the work of building that kind of proximity. I want to close with a final word here on liberation. You know, the opposite of live like a citizen is live like a sociopath. And those verbs that I was listing earlier, like listen and learn and serve, well, there's an opposite for all of them. Instead of listen, it's deafen. Instead of learn, it's reinforce your prior beliefs. Instead of connecting, it's hunkering down. Instead of serving others, it's serving yourself. Instead of participating, it's withdrawing. Instead of circulating, it's hoarding. Instead of arguing with others and sharpening your own mind, it's just echoing what someone else's mind has implanted in you. That's what it means to live like a sociopath. And here's the thing. This binary between citizens and sociopaths is not just a matter of us and them. It's a matter of what's in each of our own hearts. I want to tell you something. One of the great blessings of this time is that I've been able, in these last several weeks, to spend so much time with my mother, who's 83, in treatment for cancer, in frail health. And we recently moved her to Seattle before all of this crisis. But we're getting to do something now that would have been unthinkable in our prior life arrangements. I'm getting to visit with her every day. And we take a walk outside. And when we take that walk, we're both wearing our masks and we're moving at her speed, which is really slow. But that is such a gift that I'm so grateful for. And yet, one of the things that I realized on one of these recent walks is that the citizen and the sociopath, all of that is all around us, but all of that is also within each of us. The other day we were taking a walk and this late 20-something woman in a jogging outfit was running down the sidewalk coming toward us, huffing and puffing, sweating up a storm. And I figured she'd see us, two Asian people wearing masks. And I figured if nothing else, the baseline racism that is in the air right now would lead her to steer around us. But she just kept on coming right at us. And as she approached, I finally had to point and say, no, go this way, go around us. And as she passed, she looked at me and she said, seriously? And I looked right back at her and I said, yeah, seriously. And then as she passed, I said loud enough for her to hear, millennial. Not my proudest moment. In fact, not a moment I'm proud of at all, which is partly why I confess it here. I confess it to tell you that those instincts in those moments when we're trying to protect what is ours, those moments when we're fearful of what might happen to those we love, are also moments when we will just, with a broad brush, with a completely stereotypical, and in my case, hypocritical way, just demean somebody in that way. That's in all of us. And the question for us right now is which us is going to come to the fore. We are hope and we are fear. We are resilience and we are brittleness. We are a disaster and something waiting to be hit by disaster. We are beauty and we are terror. You know, those protests in Michigan and Minnesota that the president has been egging on in the last day. I don't entirely mind those protests because at least those folks showing up at state capitals to call for an end to social distancing and restrictions, at least they're showing up. At least they haven't given up on the system entirely. They are using their power to mobilize. The thing is this, power alone is not citizenship. Citizenship is power plus character. And having a selfish, short-sighted, sociopathic tantrum armed to the hilt with AK-47s, that's not character, that's sociopathic. And so, yes, sure, if Donald Trump wants to say liberate Minnesota, liberate Michigan, sure, let's go ahead and say that. Liberate America. Let's liberate ourselves. Let's liberate ourselves now from sociopathy. Let's liberate ourselves from egoism. Let's liberate ourselves from immediate gratification. Let's liberate ourselves from Twitter contagions. Let's liberate ourselves from binary thinking. Let's liberate ourselves from the idea that liberation is just getting to do whatever the hell you want. True liberation is responsibility. Rights, properly understood, are duties. The individual, properly understood, is a social animal. The United States, properly understood, is a great vast web of little mutual aid clubs. I want to close now with some more scripture. You know, there's not a map large enough to measure the distance from FDR to Donald Trump. And there's not a microscope powerful enough to detect that moment, that flash of decision when we choose to be like one or the other. So let me read another piece of that first inaugural address that Franklin Roosevelt gave. Happiness, he said, lies not in the mere possession of money. It lies in the joy of achievement, in the thrill of creative effort. The joy and moral stimulation of work no longer must be forgotten in the mad chase for evanescent profits. These dark days will be worth all they cost us if they teach us that our true destiny is not to be ministered unto, but to minister to ourselves and to our fellow men. Restoration calls, however, not for changes in ethics alone. This nation asks for action, and action now. He was right. We do need action now. But remember, ethics is action. By making character contagious, we will fortify ourselves for what follows COVID. Back in 1933, citizens and states were helpless, and the national government had to lead. Today, it's pretty much the reverse. Every one of us now is going to have to summon our own inner FDR. We can't wait for the recovery. We are the recovery. Let's start acting like it. Let's continue to live like citizens.
Thank you, Eric. Wow, that was fantastic. And now, once again, it is our pleasure to introduce Joey and Raquel to sing a song, and then over to Na for some more poetry.
Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.
That was so great. And I think our next song is really, really beautifully chosen because it comes from someone who I think in all of his songwriting was definitely always trying to cultivate community and bring people together with action. So as we sing Lean on Me by Bill Withers, I encourage you to, while you, of course, probably know a lot of the words, try to hear them fresh and listen for those action verbs in this great classic.
Ready?
Yeah. Sometimes in our lives, sing along. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. are wise. We know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have things you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you don't let show. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend, and I'll help you carry on. For it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Just call me. Need a friend? Call me. 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 Call me.
We gather like sunrise, form circles like recess. We stand receptive, allowing our ears and heart to dialogue, showing our virtual pearly whites like clouds, hoping it leaves you with comfort. Come forth and know that you matter here.
Thank you so much. Having art, music, poetry as a part of this gathering is so important to us, and it always recenters me and brings me light. I just appreciate you all so very much. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for joining and commenting in the chat. This feels great. I have a little announcement that we're very, very excited to share with you. We're all in this together, right? All over the country. So in addition to leading this here from Seattle, we are inviting 2 of our Civic Saturday fellows to join us in the next 2 weeks. So next Saturday and the Saturday after that, you can come on back. And next Saturday, we will be joined by Shamichael Holman from Memphis, Tennessee. And then on May 2nd, Wendy Willis from Portland, Oregon will be here. We'll host, and those 2 will give the sermon on those days.
And I just want to say a real quick word about them because they're awesome.
They are.
Shamichael is a leader in the Memphis Public Library and a catalyst in that entire community. He's been leading Civic Saturdays all throughout his city. And Wendy is one of our earliest Civic Saturday fellows who went through our civic seminary program. She's both a poet and a deliberative democracy activist, and also a force of nature. And so those two sermons in the next couple of weeks are going to be awesome.
They will. And just to let you know, so you can be prepared, Michael's Civic Sermon is on how social solidarity in this moment might help us imagine and work towards a new normal. And Wendy will be sharing a sermon. The antidote to despair is not hope. The antidote to despair is reckless, burn it all down love. So I'm looking forward to that. Before we wrap it up, it's time for gratitude. And I'd really like to thank Joey and Raquel and Na, to a member of our Civic Saturday community here in Seattle named Daniel, who is organizing the breakout civic circles after this. Big thank you to him, and to our partner, Town Hall Seattle, for helping us with these virtual gatherings and getting out the word. Let's see, the sermon. The sermon or notes on the sermon.
We're going to post this whole gathering will be recorded and available on YouTube almost as soon as we are done. And so we'll post that link to our website if you want to share it to others, and we encourage you to do so. And I also just want to thank behind the scenes, we see them on our screens right now, but you all have no idea that Tina Fotheringill, who's our senior program manager for Civic Saturdays, and Kayla DeMonte, who's the managing director of Citizen University, are I wouldn't say frantically, are actually, because they completely got this. They are just running this show, and we are just moving like puppets as they pull the strings here. So thank you and kudos to them.
All right, that's it for today. Can't wait to see you next Saturday and the Saturday after that.
And we'll see you in Civic Circles, which will start shortly.
Bye.
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 Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.